Mute. Okay. I think you guys should hear me now. Um, can you hear me now? Um, Let me know if you can hear me. Yeah. My mic was like completely off. uh I can hear you. Okay, good. Thank you. All right. Yeah, TikTok can hear me because I'm streaming on a different device. So I'll start over. So my name is Celeste. I'm a therapist from Boston. Every Wednesday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 9 Pacific Time, you can catch me doing these episodes live where I talk about issues that people go through, and I help people think about ways they can deal with it. And today I want to talk about anxiety. Yes, life management tribe. Today I want to talk about anxiety. Anxiety is something that's huge. It's so interesting when I work with people and they kind of talk about the life that they had, and I realized like they never really dealt with the things that they went through. And when I start talking about anxiety, they're like, oh my gosh, they didn't notice it, right? And so what happens is they start to pay attention to some of the signs, and they will find themselves realizing like they've been just operating full of anxiety all of these years without knowing. And so I have some visuals too. So TikTok is the only place where people can't see the visuals because it doesn't allow me to incorporate live streaming on StreamYard. So I want to talk about anxiety. What is it? And I want to help you think about ways you can deal with it, how to move on from being used by your child's other parent, how to move on from. Oh, that's the question you have. So after I talk about anxiety, I'll definitely answer questions. So what I do is I talk about a subject, and then we talk about ways to deal with it, and then I allow you all to ask questions that you want about mental health. So the first thing I want to start with, if we're going to talk about anxiety, is defining it. And as you can see, it says a feeling of worry, nervousness, or unease, typically about an imminent event or something with an uncertain outcome. And so when it says an imminent event, right? I think about how sometimes people, there's nothing happening in front of you, but because of the way you've built it up in your head, it feels like something's happening. And literally, what will happen is your system will get ready for something that may not even be going on. A lot of people don't realize this, that we can create a lot of anxiety just by the way that we're thinking about something, right? And some people's anxiety is very clear. You can see it, they can name it. There's a lot of people, like I was somebody that the way I dealt with anxiety, I will always plan for the future, but I never would have said I was an anxious person, like ever. I wouldn't have used that, right? So that's the first thing I want to do is I wanted to name what anxiety is for people that may not know what anxiety is. The next thing I want you to think about is how it builds up, and how does anxiety start and how does it build up. So for people that can't see the visual, or if you're listening to this on the podcast, it says a big event or a buildup of smaller stressful life situations may trigger excessive anxiety. For example, a death in the family, work stress, or ongoing worry about finances. Personality. People with certain personality types are more prone to anxiety disorders than others. And so look at this first part about a big event or buildup of smaller stressful life situations. That's an important note, right? Because when we are growing up in life, and depending on what kind of family dynamic that you came on, right? Like death happens, trauma happens. And if you are not being talked to, if nobody's telling you what's going on, what tends to happen is that all of those events starts piling up. And so a lot of times people's anxiety started at a young age when they were younger. I've talked to people who have lost people. They remember going to funerals. They don't remember anybody talking to them. And I think, we have a hard time with dealing with hard things because we were never taught how to deal with it. We will party, we'll drink, we'll put kids into different activities thinking that this will make them feel okay. Yeah, in the moment it feels okay, But what's happening in the back of their mind is that they're holding on to these things, and especially if nobody's talking to them about it. And it's not about, fault. My goal when I talk about the way these different things take place is to help you understand why it's happening, because some people will beat themselves up for constantly worrying, for constantly struggling, instead of recognizing, okay, you know what? This is happening because of this. Let me have a little bit of grace with myself, because I was never taught how to deal with things that come up in my life. We can be our biggest bullies when it comes to working on ourselves and change. We'll really think it's something outside of us, but a lot of times it's the way that we're framing things and talking to ourselves about things. So when you think about how anxiety can build up, it doesn't have to be something big that happened recently. It could be something small that started at a young age, and then you started to become hyper aware and hyper focused on it. So I want to show a diagram of what it kind of looks like in the body. So a lot of people don't understand that anxiety psychologically, it manifests in our body. And so as you can see, it says a sense of doom, headaches, irritability, breathing problems, right? A lot of people end up back and forth in the doctor's office, struggling with feeling like they're going to have a heart attack or something, right? Increase in blood pressure, muscle aches, and other pains, panic attacks, depression. Believe it or not, a lot of people don't realize that depression is one. Extreme fatigue, pounding heart, upset stomach, a loss of libido. The upset stomach thing, a lot of people are visiting their GI, they're having stomach issues, they can't eat, they're having a hard time because they're struggling with, they may be struggling with some type of anxiety. You said, I hate dealing with anxiety. Yes, a lot of people are, and they don't realize it. Interesting, I sense a lot of pain in the chest and headaches. And so, as I'm talking about this, obviously I'm not your therapist. And so I do want you to think about this stuff, especially if you're going to the doctor, especially if you're getting told, everything checks out physically, right? Don't just let them like give you an anti-anxiety or just give you a med. Like really start to write down and pay attention to when the symptoms are happening. Because when I work with people and these symptoms happen, whether it's the headaches, whether it's the irritability, like you're saying on here, I start to piece together with them how a situation it started, and this is when it started. And so they begin to start to look at the ways that anxiety is showing up and manifesting because they are becoming more aware of it. So I want you to think about, and I know like everybody doesn't have access to therapy, like it makes it so hard, right? Everybody doesn't have access to therapy. And that's why like this podcast I created in 2018 to help people get some knowledge around things that they don't realize is happening. So those were like some of the ways it can manifest in our body. I want to pull up some subtle ways that a lot of people may not think about that can be happening. And so if you're on TikTok, hi. If on YouTube, on other platforms, you can see the visuals that I'm putting up. But subtle signs of anxiety, carrying physical tension, right? Is there any way for me to put myself on the screen? Let me see. No. Okay. Well, I'm gonna show like physical tension. Literally, let me just take this off for a second. Physical tension, like literally, some people are walking around like this, and tensed up. Like you don't even realize your fists are probably always like this, or you're always like this, right? I didn't realize I was walking around like this and like holding the steering wheel until I started practicing yoga, and I got more in tune to what my body was doing. I was literally walking around on edge, right? And that's because, your body's like working on preparing for the worst, because that's what we've taught it, because we haven't interrupted that cycle from when things happen. So some more subtle signs: skin picking, nail biting, or foot tapping, right? Pay attention to when that's happening, whether it's before a meeting or, whatever it is. You can start to be your biggest what's the word I'm looking for? Like you can really begin to be the person that really knows yourself well because you're with yourself all the time, right? And so if you don't have the opportunity to work with somebody on a regular basis, right, due to finances or due to just not being able to find somebody that's a good fit, you can start paying attention to how things are manifesting for you. So if you find yourself skin picking, nail biting, foot tapping, that could be a sign of anxiety. Increasing your alcohol intake, right? You know, a lot of times people will look at struggles with alcoholism. It's like, oh, if it's wine, it's okay, right? I'm not drinking the hard stuff, or like I'm not on the corner. I don't want it during the day. Like, but if you're coming home from work, drinking, rushing or thinking about, I can't wait to get to this so I can like relax because you're probably on edge. Pay attention to if you are increasing your alcohol use. This is another subtle sign that people would not realize, but procrastinating and putting things off, that's something that can come up for people a lot, and you don't realize it's the anxiety. You said I fear relapse soon, and it sounds like you've been on a journey of working through your struggles. When you, instead of fearing like that you're going to relapse, one thing you can do is tap into your resources, the thing that has kept you sober over the years. Don't allow the fear to stop you. So if you realize it's something, there's meetings all the time, really tapping into a support group. Someone says, I've increased my cannabis use due to my anxiety. And that's another one too, because this one just shows alcohol. But I noticed cannabis is another one where, alcohol, cannabis in certain states, obviously not everywhere, unfortunately, it's legal. And some people are able to use it for luxury or pleasure, or, sometimes it does help with people's anxiety. But there is a thing with overuse, and it's one of those things where people may not look at that deeply. But recognizing if you're using cannabis a lot and you're vegging out or you're not getting things done, one thing I talk to people about is like harm reduction, whether it's alcohol, whether it's food, whether it's shopping, right? There's so many different kind of addictions. I talk to people about paying attention to when you're using it, right? And then asking yourself before you use it, what am I feeling, or what do I need? A lot of times we're not asking ourselves questions, and we're just jumping right into the use because it's like it becomes automatic, right? So paying attention to like when you want to use, and like, what am I feeling? Why am I doing it? Because let's say that you're feeling overwhelmed because you have a lot of things on your plate, right? So instead of me going and drinking or using cannabis, let me start to write down the things that I need to do and work on like giving myself a timeline, right? Like really become solution focused. I'm going to talk about the managing piece. I used to bite my nails when I was younger, but now I stopped. Good. That's one of the signs. Yep. Biting your nails. Procrastinate and rushing to get things done, right? So some people will be like, yo, Celeste, I work good under pressure. And I'm like, yeah, but what about all that anxiety, right? Because some people that are so used to waiting to the last minute, things get done. So you kind of get rewarded for procrastinating, and you tell yourself like, oh, I work good under pressure. But no, that's your way of trying to rationalize the way that you're operating, which isn't good. Seeking distractions, right? Phone is an easy distraction. Helping others is another distraction. Constantly planning ahead. That one was me. I'm notorious. Like, okay, worst case scenario happens. Like that's better than when something bad happens. Like at least I told myself it was fine because I'm preparing for the worst. So when the worst happens, I'm ready. Like literally constantly planning ahead. Avoiding spontaneity, like where not spontaneous or unable to do things like that, or not pre-planned because of your anxiety. Seeking perfection, right? There's a lot of like creators and people that want to start something and it's never the quite right time or never the quite right fit, right? Seeking perfection is a subtle sign of anxiety. And then finding it difficult to delegate to others, like, because like if I delegate to others, are they going to get it right? Like where you may have a 50 million 11 things going on, and you find yourself not being able to do anything. So those are some of the subtle signs of anxiety. Not the only list, but hopefully it gives you an idea on some ways that you may be struggling. And so it will kind of show up in your body in different ways as well, which a lot of people don't realize. And so I want to help you understand how to manage it, right? So as I'm talking about these things, I want you to think about it not like this is what I'm going to do when I'm feeling anxious, but this is what I'm going to create as part of my regular routine, right? Because I want you to look at managing this stuff as if, you were like eating, right? You got to eat every day, right? Eating allows you to survive. If you're not eating or drinking water, like you're not gonna survive. You need water, you need nutrients, right? We need this stuff. We're living creatures, and so that allows us to survive. I want you to think about what I'm talking about now in regards to managing it, as these are things that I need to do to make sure I'm living life. When you're operating with a system full of anxiety, it's honestly hard to live life because you're always worried. And another thing too is that when you're so used to living with the anxiety, your system is always in overdrive, right? Like your system is always on alert, worried and waiting for the thing to happen. And so if your system is always on alert, waiting for the next thing to happen, that means that you're not able to be in the moment. That means you're not able to have any peace. You can't have peace worried about the future. You can't have peace dwelling on the past. It can only be in the moment. And for a lot of people, being in the moment is something that had been scary growing up, right? Being in the moment, a traumatic thing took place. So you learned to escape from the moment and like go into like a daydream state, because it's easier. And at the time during the thing, whatever happened or whatever you were going through at the time, that worked, right? Those things that our body did to protect us during hard times where we just escaped mentally, that worked for the moment, right? So when those moments come up where you find yourself on this high alert, like you can literally like take your hand, put it over your heart and say, thank you, body, for trying to protect me, but I'm okay, right? Because as I said at the beginning of the broadcast, we will create anxiety just by the way that we're framing things. And we are the only creatures that can go into flight and fight response just with our thoughts, right? You have people, well, not people, animals in the wild, they have the fight or flight response. Like they see a predator and they run, right? And then once they get to safety, they're back at baseline. For us, as human beings, something happens. And if we're not working through it, which a lot of us didn't have the luxury or the opportunity to, right? It wasn't nobody's fault. We just didn't. If we're not working through it, all of these things are adding up. And so what's happening is our system is going to be like in high alert. And it's literally doing that to protect us. It's doing what it's designed to do. And so when you can get more into the moment, when you can get more, as uncomfortable as it can be, you can learn how to teach your system to be okay. Where you can say like, I'm okay, I'm safe. And your system will be like, okay, all right, I'll back off, right? Because it's getting ready to like kind of help you and protect you. So how do I manage anxiety? The first thing I want you to do is learn about anxiety, like how it manifests, the things we talked about. The second thing to think about is mindfulness, right? Being mindful is important, but I also understand it's hard. Like I never want to negate the fact. I don't want to just talk about things. It's like, oh, start to be mindful. But I want to say, if you've never like worked on being mindful can feel scary. Being in the moment can feel really hard, right? Because you're not used to being in that space. Relaxation techniques. YouTube is a great space. I love YouTube because there's so many people that give out really good knowledge and allow us to share a piece of their gift for free. And so there are like, that's where I started yoga. I started yoga on YouTube. I couldn't afford to go to a yoga studio, nor did I have the time. So I did it in the comfort of my own home. So there are different like somatic therapists and somatic practitioners that offer like their free like knowledge where they're doing techniques with you. So relaxation techniques, one way you can implement it. I'm all about how do I implement something so it doesn't feel like I'm adding something on my plate, right? Because that can feel hard. One of the things that I always talk to people about is shower like meditation. And you're already taking a shower, so why not make that a place where you can work on getting back into your senses, paying attention to what you're feeling, what happened today, that what went wrong, what didn't go well, right? So if you're already taking a shower, you can make that time into your space of reflecting and relaxing and not just rushing through. So that's one way to start. Food adjustment. Sorry, hold on. Food adjustment is another way. If you're struggling with the anxiety or even depression, I'll talk about depression next week, but our foods play a huge role in our mood, believe it or not. And so that's something to really think about. Like, what am I eating? Also, sometimes when we're so anxious and so overwhelmed, we may find ourselves using food to cope, right? And then we use food to cope, then the food weighs us down literally and mentally and fogginess, right? And it keeps us in a state of anxiety. So pay attention to like what you're eating and seeing if you need to make some adjustments. Um, Nathan, it sounds like I'm already attempting to do the right thing. This is inspiring. Yay, that makes me happy. Exercise. Now, exercise is really hard, especially if you're not used to doing it. And let's not take the, the way America paints the anxiety and that you have to have this and that. Nope. Like I always say, just get up and walk. Um, Moving your body will help you get some natural endorphin, serotonin. And believe it or not, it'll be hard to stay in an anxious state when you're moving your body. Like that's so important to think about doing. So if you are struggling with the anxiety, exercise is a great way. Another thing is learning how to be assertive, right? Um, this is important. Being assertive is important because some people that have anxiety or struggling with the anxiety, hey Ann. Some people that, yeah, Periscope Day, somebody on there remember me from Periscope. Yes, yes, yes. Um, some people that are struggling with the anxiety, it's because you don't know how to say no, right? And I know saying no is so hard. Sorry, saying no is so hard, but you're doing this thing, you're saying yes. And then what happens is that you're overwhelmed, right? Then the stuff that you didn't get done is not getting done. So being assertive can really go a long way for you when it comes to your struggles with the anxiety. So I know like saying no is because some people that I'll say no, but some people that aren't used to it, it kind of feels like I don't know how to do that. So I want to give you another alternative. If you like, you can't, you have a hard time saying no. Tell people, you know what? Let me check my calendar, right? And you need to be penciling time or not penciling because pencil you can erase, pen it in your schedule. We make commitments to everyone and everything else. When it comes to ourselves, we make it so negotiable. But when it comes to what other people need and how people want us to show up, we will do it on purpose. We'll do it and not think about it. When it comes to like, oh, I had this meditation or this yoga class scheduled and somebody else needs us, we'll be like, oh, I'll do it next week. Like, no, don't do that. Like, say no, I can't do it. Even if you can, like, you need you to be okay. That's so important. Someone says, this is what I'm learning with my child's mother. I always say yes because I can't walk away from the other children that look at me like a father. Oh, I don't want to be another person just to walk out. Right. And so in that situation, like, what you just described, what people do is they go off of their emotion because you feel bad. And we're human. We're going to feel bad, right? So when I think about being assertive, understand that you may feel bad doing it, right? But don't not do it because you feel bad, right? If you don't have the capacity, you don't have the capacity. So just kind of be mindful of that as you're moving through this like idea of like trying to stick up for yourself and be more compassionate and kind. I have three more. Building self-esteem is helpful. So when it comes to anxiety too, sometimes people don't really know their worth or their value because of what's happened or what people have said, or even maybe some of the things that you have done to put yourself in the predicament. So you forget who you are, you forget your value. And so building self-esteem will allow you to walk in a room and be okay, right? And not worry, like, what are they thinking? You're not going to care what they're thinking because you know who you are. And even if, let's say you have a past, right? Yes, I have a past. Yes, I've done some things. But you know what? Today I'm a different person, right? That's the old me. I'm not going to allow people to bring me back to where I was before, right? So building your self-esteem can really help you with your anxiety. Structured problem solving, right? So as I talked about earlier, we have all these thoughts in our head and they just stay there, right? We need to give the thoughts a place, right? So let's say like like I want to exercise more, I want to be a better parent to my children, I want to be a better partner, like I want to eat healthier, right? There's all these things that we just let swirl in our head that we want to do, and it goes nowhere. So the thought starts. That's where you got to start with the thought. But then what do I do next? A great way. So I'm talking about structured problem solving. A great way is like take your paper or a notebook, right? And really literally just start to flesh out the thoughts. Like, what is it that I need? There's actually a wellness wheel. Let me see if I can pull it up. Oh, I have one right here. So there's a wellness wheel too you can use as you're like, if you want to work on organizing your thoughts, you can use a wellness wheel to go through the different areas of your life. And if you Google wellness wheel, you'll find different variations. You can create it on your own. That'll help you organize your life to really start problem solving in the areas. Because you can look at this little wheel and be like, oh yeah, financially I want to do this, environmentally I want to fix my room, get more organized, emotionally I want to get more in tune with my thoughts. This will help you structure the way that you're managing your life. Someone says, I'm literally going through this, trying to not internalize how people perceive me, and it's literally killing me. I know. And I'll tell you now that there's been so many like studies on people that's been on their deathbed. And the number one thing that these people say they wish they didn't, they wish they did different is, I wish I didn't care about what people thought about me. Right? That's like something that I honestly never really experienced. So I didn't even know it was a thing till I started working with people. I don't know how I ended up not caring about people's opinion of me, but it definitely saved me because I just keep doing things like and moving forward. But I recognize that's the difference with people and why they're not pushing forward with the things that they know they need to do or want to do. They are worried about what people will think. And I promise you, nobody cares. And even if they do, that means that, when people have an opinion about your life, when you're not harming anyone, it's one thing if you're harming people, then you're going to get opinions. But when you're not harming anyone and somebody wants to like say something about what you're doing, because this happened to me, I think about, dang, their life must be so miserable where they're putting their energy into what I'm doing, because I'm not paying their bills, nor are they paying my bills. Like sometimes, like if you're somebody that really constantly thinks about what people think, you really got to start talking to yourself that way. You got to start saying like, hold on for a second, like, why does it matter? What do they provide me? Why do I even care? Like really start digging into it. Eventually you'll find yourself like walking with your head up, not even thinking twice about what people are going to think. It's really a mindset shift, right? And if you grew up in certain cultures where you were talked about, or people like, oh, look at you, what do you have on, a blah, blah, blah. Like if it's cultural, sometimes culturally, that's where that stems from. There's a lot of reasons why, and now that I think about it, that didn't happen growing up for me. It literally like, I didn't have that where people were saying stuff to me like, and I think sometimes people don't realize how that has framed Haitian culture. Yeah. Okay. Say less. No, no. I would love to get a copy of the wellness wheel. Yeah, Google it. You'll you'll find it. Celeste, is this based on non-neurodivergence, as I am a neurodivergent and these suggested therapies don't work for me? Yeah, so neurodivergency, that's a great point. Some of the things like that therapists talk about, and may not work for you. And anything I ever talk about, like, it's not like it's an exact science, like, yes, this is going to work, do it this way. Especially when it comes to thinking patterns, it's just a little bit different, right? And I'm so happy that there's so much more education around neurodivergence. So, because there's so many people that's been walking around trying to do it the way a lot of people say do, and they're finding themselves feeling like they're failing, right? So definitely, for people that are neurodivergent and your mind is operating a little differently than what I'm talking about, really be mindful on the literature that you're paying attention to, so that you're not feeling like, well, why isn't it working? Like, it just is something different. I was compared a lot to in family, yeah, and even and family systems too. Sometimes there's an older sibling that may be a little bit more intellectually smart. And then let's say you have enough, because being intellectually smart in America is like the go-to thing. Artistically smart. I'm not the intellectual piece, but I'm definitely, when it comes to interpersonal, I'm very like high. I would be high on that like totem pole. So some people in family systems, why can't you do it like your brother? Why can't you do it like your sister? Blah, blah, blah. And it's not no shade to the parents. The parents didn't know. They really were trying to figure out why, not realizing like we're all different, right? So really paying some of those things where you find yourself caring about what people think. Sometimes that was due to the way you was compared to growing up. Exactly. A lot of people are miserable and want everyone else around them to be miserable. Yes. So, and then I want to say, it's not like it's intentional all the time. It's not like people like, oh, I'm miserable, let me go find Celeste to try to make her miserable. I don't think it happens that like deeply. I think it literally is like, that's the only thing that comes out of them is like, why do you have that? I know people where like, I'm so used to them with their negative comments, in my personal life, where I'm just like, I know what it is. I'm not their therapist, but I'm like, dang, they are really miserable because the only thing they have to say is negative things. And, it is what it is, but it's not my business. I'm starting to do this. I've literally said I'm not interested in going out of my way to schedule a meetup. Yes, that's so important. Now I don't care what people think, and I used to. Yes, that's good. And so like this person said, now I don't care what people think, and I like I used to. I promise you it's possible. Like some people think that they're going to feel this way all their lives, or they're always going to care. The idea of like being in a space and not caring seems like impossible, but I promise you, like, our mind is malleable. We can teach it how to go in a different direction, right? And I feel like the more knowledge we have, the more we can work on changing that. The last thing I want to say about anxiety is support groups is another great way. There's a lot of free support groups. Excuse me. Even this like live podcast where sorry, I just got a call coming. Even this like live podcast that I'm doing, and I'm like sharing comments, and I'm talking about this. It's not a support group, but you start to be like, oh, I'm not alone when people are sharing some of the similar things that you're going through, or I'm talking about things where you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. You're starting to realize you're not alone because you're getting out of your head, right? And the one thing you don't want to do when you're struggling, whether it's like depression or anxiety symptoms, you don't want to be isolated. You don't want to be isolated with your thoughts. You don't want to keep your thoughts in your head. And the reason why, because our mind looks for evidence with what we're thinking. And so if you're not mindful, if you're not in tune with your thoughts, and all you're having is what are people going to think and blah, 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 your mind's going to show you, you're going to look at that girl over there. You see the way she looked at you? She could have been just taking a whole yawn, right? But because your mind is only going at the direction that you're telling it, it's literally going to show you ways that it's going to create a reality for you that is not real, right? It's going to fill in the blanks for things you're not sure of. And so the more you stay isolated in that state, the more your mind will help you stay there. I always say the same way that you see, if you drive a car, you see that car everywhere. It's not because everybody decided to get the car that you have. It's because your mind sees it every day when you're getting up for work. So what's happening is when it's shown on the road, it seems like there's more cars that are like yours than not. And so if you're somebody that finds yourself like struggling, make sure you continue to engage in literature, even if you don't have a coach or you don't have a therapist. Like, don't think that because, there's somatic work that you can do. There's podcasts you can listen to. There's books you can read, right? I think therapy is great. I'm a therapist. Like, I wouldn't be doing this work if I didn't think it was great. But I also know the lack of finances and a lack of therapists that are not available. And so does that mean I need to just sit around and suffer? Absolutely not, right? Like, you can start writing things down and getting it out your head. So be intentional about this process. If anything I ever said resonates for you, being intentional, and making sure, these things I'm talking about doing to manage it, making sure it's not just something that you do when you're feeling anxious, but make sure it's something that you do on a regular basis to try to incorporate it into your schedule. I isolate a lot because I'm embarrassed of what I'm going through and constantly feeling like I'm being judged. This is true. I've been experiencing this for a long time. So, and that's the thing, you say you constantly isolate because you're worried, you're feeling embarrassed, but you got to just be honest with yourself. I always tell people, like, it's not about you sharing it with the world. I talk a lot about the struggles that, I'm very like a transparent person. My platform provides that. But that's not what makes me okay. I think instead of isolating yourself, you can attend what is it called? A virtual support group where you can keep your camera off. You don't have to talk. You can start there. You can read books about anxiety. They have workbooks as well, right? So even if you're not quite there where you want to like go into a space where you're sitting and you're at a support group, like create that space in your environment where you're constantly engaging in ways to manage it. So, because if you do that, what happens is your mind starts to look for ways you can manage it, right? So the more you leave it unchecked, the more you just let it be, your mind's going to like say, okay, we're anxious. It doesn't know we're not anxious because I'm not telling it. And so it's not as like simple as ABC. I know that, but I know it will never change if we don't start. So like I always tell people, if you start today, you'll be in a different place in 2 months, right? And then in a different place, and then start to look at the ways that you've grown. Can I recommend a book? No, I mean, I can't think of any off the top of my head, believe it or not. What I will say though, is you can start journaling. Journaling is a great way to get your thoughts out, to think about what you're thinking. And then I can, if you email me or message me, like I can send you a list. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but you can also like, you can go on Amazon or Google too, and think about, and type in like books to help manage anxiety or workbook. And then you can look at the reviews. I always look at reviews. So that's one thing you can do. But journaling is a really great resource as well. And actually, believe it or not, like I created this journal, 365 Days of Intentional Living. So when I used to go on Periscope back in 2000, and so Periscope isn't here anymore. They got rid of it. But back in like 2016, 17, I would come on 5 days a week. I do this 1 day a week now on Wednesdays, but I would come on 5 days a week at 12 o'clock. And I would talk about an issue. People would join in. It was a dope community. And then I would tell people to like, journal. And I always journal since I was a girl. Like I didn't even know that. You remember that, Anne? Yeah, I used to come on. And I used to journal, just write in my diary. And I didn't realize like what I was doing was helping me, right? I didn't look at it. It was like, oh, I'm trying to be therapeutic and take care of my thoughts. I did not know that like that was helpful there. And so I would talk to people about journaling, and then people was like, well, how do you journal? I don't know what does that look like, And so, and I always tell people, I never said I wanted to be an author. I never even wanted to be on no platform. Like, everything just happened. Like if you understood how I got here, you would be like, what? It wasn't like intentional. But basically, in this journal, I ask people a question. First, I say, "How are you feeling?" Then I ask you a question. So, for instance, on this day 88, it says, "Look at the feelings chart. Identify how you're feeling." Then it says, "If you suppress the parts of you that you do not want to see, it can leave you feeling unbalanced." What are the odds of it being literally what we're talking about today? That's wild. Y'all see me? I just opened it up. That is so wild. Sorry, I got this bad cough. Hold on. It says, "Try looking at your entire self." So that was a statement on day 88. And this next one is a question. Look at the feelings chart, identify how you're feeling. Do you notice negative thoughts sneaking in your mindset? If you're unaware of them, try to reframe them. That's crazy. This whole page is literally what we're talking about today. That is wild. But anyways, so yeah, it says it can leave you unbalanced, right? So if you're not paying attention to what you're what you're thinking, you can really be off. What are you feeding your mind? Somebody said, "What are you telling yourself?" That's something I have to be mindful of on a daily basis. Yeah, and another thing is feeding your mind. That my sister actually. I remember my sister said, she was like, feeding your mind. You got to look at it. When we're feeding ourselves, we're hungry, we go to the refrigerator and eat. I remember she said this. And then she says, but when we're anxious, when we're feeling these things, we literally don't have a resource, right? And so you got to give yourself a resource. And I can use one of these topic days to talk about like kind of building your resource, right? Because a lot of times people's resources to sleep or to scroll on social media or to drink or to party or to shop, right? Those resources like leave us feeling like all over the place. So really being mindful what you're feeding your mind, because your mind is listening. Any questions? Thank you. You're welcome. It feels good to write something and get out, but sometimes I feel like I need someone to read what I'm feeling to make it real. Do you believe in coincidence? Yeah, it's crazy. So you don't, writing it down and then going over it too, because when you write it down, it doesn't have the same power. So a lot of times when we are having this thought, I'll have people talking in sessions and then they'll say something. They're like, well, this sounds crazy, but, and then they start to say it, the power starts going away. Like the thing that they're thinking that is a little bit off starts to like diminish, right? People don't realize that is that if you keep it in your head, it literally will have power. If anything I ever say resonates for you, you can actually like start today. You can like, it's not, I want to make this a thing where it's like, I can go to the dollar store, get a notebook, start paying attention to what I'm feeling. When I find myself picking my nails or tapping or my stomach's turning, what's going on? Who's next to me? What am I feeling? Right? Really start to be an investigator of your own self. And, you're always with you. So why not allow yourself to do that? The reason why growing up, it didn't happen because a lot of times our parents didn't even know. They didn't have time. They were probably in survival mode themselves. How are they going to access how we're feeling if they don't even know how they're feeling? And so we're not going to use that as an excuse. We're not going to use our history as an excuse. We're going to identify it, and then we're going to work on making concrete, solution-oriented changes. So thank you so much. Next Wednesday, we'll be back 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Every Wednesday, you can find me. And this episode will be on audio podcast. So if you listen to me on audio, you'll find it there. You can share it with somebody that you love. It will be on all, I keep it on all like the social media platforms, except for TikTok. It doesn't allow you to keep it, but I'll make sure, excuse me, I'll make sure to keep it on. And until next time, y'all, it has been, it's almost an hour. Until next time, y'all, I will talk.